Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dewbs & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
All too often, people will be sitting at home watching a press conference live, and they'll hear loads of questions being asked, and they'll be thinking, that's not my question. That's not my concern.
We don't care whose feathers we ruffle. We ask the questions that you want answering.
You're all standing on the street protesting and want to have an open discussion.
My name is Patrick Christie's. I do a show for GB News in the UK. Is it possible to talk to you quickly?
Journalism in this country has been a cosy world full of groupthink until now.
Well, this is the best view ever of Whitehall, looking out across all the tractor drivers of England who've come together to make their point.
Hello, so as you can see, I'm here in Westminster as the protest begins.
Yes, I'm very much in the thick of it.
Look, we're challenging narratives here at GB News, and that's what sets us apart.
Good evening, it is 6 o'clock. I'm Nana Acquia. You're watching and listening to Dewbs & Co. coming up in the next hour.
European nations are reporting that your president might as well be the leader of the European nations also. They listen to us and they respect us like they've never respected us before.
So would you want the US President Donald Trump to lead Europe? I don't know, I'm actually OK with that. He thinks that he would do a good job. And now almost half of teenagers now admit that they've missed school because of anxiety. What do you make of that at home? A digital ID card won't stop the boats, says the former Tory Security Minister. I mean, who knew? But will the Prime Minister push on with it anyway? And with the EU rowing back on its petrol car ban, Ed Miliband is looking increasingly isolated. So should Britain now reconsider the 2030 deadline? So joining me this evening, my panel tonight, the co-founder of the Together Association, Alan Miller, and also journalist and former political advisor, Joe Phillips. But before we get stuck into the debates, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good evening. Your headlines at 1 minute past 6. More photos from the Epstein estate have been released by the Democrats, featuring Bill Gates, Donald Trump and his former advisor, Steve Bannon, as well as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. However, it's being reported a spokesperson for the Republican-led Oversight Committee has criticised Democrats for today's release, accusing them of cherry-picking photos and making targeted redactions to create a false narrative about President Trump. Trump and Epstein were friends during the 1990s and early 2000s, but Trump says he broke off ties before Epstein pleaded guilty to prostitution charges. Sir Keir Starmer has held talks with the Belgian Premier on the prospect of using frozen Russian assets to help Ukraine amid concerns in Brussels over the move. The Prime Minister hosted Bart de Wever in Downing Street today as European leaders seek to agree a path forward to providing Kyiv with further support. Britain has said it is ready to move in tandem with the EU to unlock Russian sovereign assets, the vast majority of which are held in Belgium. But Belgium has so far resisted the move, calling on other nations in the bloc to share the risk, amid fears it would be left on the hook to pay back the loan if Russia succeeded in thwarting the plan. Sir Keir Starmer has welcomed the Belgian Prime Minister. Meanwhile, the Armed Forces Minister says the UK is rapidly developing plans to prepare for war. Al Khan says the shadow of war is knocking on Europe's door once more. That's the reality. We've got to be prepared to deter it. This comes as NATO chief Mark Rutte told allies yesterday that Europe must ready itself for a confrontation with Russia on the kind of the scale of our grandparents and great-grandparents. In other news, Reform UK has become Britain's largest party after overtaking Labour. That's according to the Times newspaper. New leaked figures today show the Labour Party has fallen below 250,000 paid-up members, suggesting it has lost one every 7 minutes since winning office in July of last year. This means Reform UK, which has 268,631 paid-up members, according to its own live counter, is now the largest party. Elsewhere, Wes Streeting says a surge in so-called superflu cases will present the NHS with a challenge unlike any it has seen since the pandemic. The Health Secretary says the NHS was in a precarious situation and warned that next week's planned strikes by resident doctors could be the Jenga piece that collapses the tower. The number of patients in hospital with influenza has risen more than 50% in the past week, with officials warning there is still no sign of superflu peaking yet. And Taylor Swift has broken down in tears after meeting families of the Southport attack victims, according to a new TV documentary. The series, filmed while she was on tour, also includes footage of the American pop star reflecting on the stabbings that saw 3 children killed when they attended a dance and yoga workshop themed around her music. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Nana.
To Dewbs and Co with me, Nana Okwere. Now joining me, my panel until 7 o'clock, co-founder of the Together Association, Alan Miller, and also journalist and former political advisor, Joe Phillips. So as ever, send me all of your thoughts in the usual way, gbnews.com/your say. I'd love to hear your views on anything and everything. But, you know, I don't know about you, but I do get sort of tired by people almost not understanding or accepting the whole Brexit notion and that it is a good idea for us to try and be a sovereign nation. But there are lots of reports at the moment which suggest that Donald Trump's administration is actually aiming to persuade 4 European countries to mirror the UK's departure from the European Union.
The European nations are reporting that your president might as well be the leader of the European nations also. They listen to us and they respect us like they've never respected us before.
So according to the US publication Defense One, leaked classified files indicate that Donald Trump is hoping to get Austria, Hungary, Italy and Poland to exit the EU in a similar way that the UK has done. Now, the documents also outline a proposal for a new C5 group uniting the United States, China, India, Japan and Russia as a possible alternative to the G7. All of that is part of the sort of unofficial version, apparently a leaked version. So let's see what my panel make of that. So I'm going to start with you. Alan Miller, your thoughts on this particular document?
Well, we've seen a lot of pearl clutching about this. How outrageous that a president should be trying to do geopolitical strategy and having relationships. I mean, you know, we all know that actually during the Cold War, geopolitical strategy was really important. But I think the key thing is when we've had a nation where 17.4 million people gave the biggest democratic mandate, that the idea of a sovereign nation state is very important, and the idea of the demos, not so much the kratia, the people, not the power, because the problem with the EU is that it's not at all democratic. It's run by technocrats. It's always been a supranational organisation, the supra bit meaning above the people, above the demos, with an idea of a global series of powers and measures. They've got all sorts of shadowy meetings that you never really get proper accounting of, and they don't represent citizens in a nation state. You can't vote to throw them out. So I actually think it would be a fantastic thing if the demos and the public in Europe come out of the EU. And I think that that debate is really important. And he also makes the point about what's happening civilizationally, and people are very, very nervous about those conversations, but I think we need to have them.
Joe Phillips, why do you think that people seem to be so afraid of being a sovereign nation? That's what it appears to be. We all want to be in this little club called the EU.
Well, I think there are about, there's about 1,000,001 things to unpick there. A sovereign nation is exactly what Ukraine is fighting for. Yeah. That's exactly why their young men and women are dying, and have been for years now. Meanwhile, Trump is quite happy to work with Putin to sort of say, oh, no, give up the land, even the land that the Russians haven't got.
Should he not work with them?
Well, you can't have it both ways, Nana. You can't say we believe in a sovereign state, but not if it's Ukraine. You know, you can't do it that way. And I think if you put Brexit, which in my opinion was a complete disaster, and that is as much to do with the lies that people were told and the way that it was implemented afterwards. If you put that to one side and you look at Europe as a continent, as a landmass, and the actual geographical nature of Europe, it makes an awful lot of sense for Europe to work together. Now, we see the threat from Russia. It was, as Sophia was saying in the news, Mark Rutte, the General Secretary of NATO, mentioned it yesterday. And, you know, whilst we're probably not going to see tanks rolling up a street near you anytime soon, we are already at war if you look at what's happening in cybersecurity. And you look at, for instance, the hack on Jaguar Land Rover, which has had such a massive impact on our economy, the country's economy, never mind that company and all the people down the supply chain. So that happens. Now, you know, we can't say for sure whether it was Russia or who it was, but there are bad actors out there, and I wouldn't trust Donald Trump as far as I could throw him. This is about him operating on, you know, Putin is pulling his strings. But I think there are real questions about our security, and I think what we need to be looking at, and whether that's the UK as a sovereign state or with our European partners, but for the reasons I've said, we need to really think about resilience.
So you trust Keir Starmer then? But also, I just want to put you up on the lies that people were told, which is what you said about with regard to the people who voted Brexit. Do you genuinely think that the people who voted Brexit believed all the stuff the politicians said, or the people who voted Remain believed the stuff the politicians said?
Well, there were some out-and-out lies, Nana, like
from both.
Yes. But for the £365 million a week that the NHS was going to get, is very tempting.
Well, I think the thing is that people would like to talk about lies. We have seen lots of lies in the last few years, not just through the lockdowns, but also with the BBC, which are coming out increasingly.
And the Labour Party.
Indeed. But the thing about the idea that lies is that it often represents the British public as though they're stupid. The British public for a long time have wanted to send an instruction to technocrats, which is get control of the borders, make sure we can make decisions. Don't keep outsourcing your decisions to an unelected technocracy, because that was the excuse for decades. We can't do this, our hands are tied. And it's still the reason why, one of the reasons why, people have not got to grips with the issue of the boats and the HRC. So the point is that when we say it's about lies, the idea is that all the stupid people but were gullible and they believed... No. That's the idea that's promoted. They believed these, you know, when Boris said something or others. But actually, the instruction was very clear: to be able to get back control of decision-making so people could be accountable in Britain and be had their feet held to the fire. Now, as it happens, one of the things we're seeing in Britain now as a consequence of that is that people are being held somewhat more accountable. We've still got issues. Meanwhile, this government is talking about making more of a connection again. Now, I'm all for working with Europe, but that doesn't mean a single market. That doesn't mean, once again, having a supranational organisation. That means being able to have interests and representing what the majority of the British public wants on the international stage. So Europe is a fantastic thing,
but doesn't that come
but not the European Union.
But doesn't that come back to the original question, which is about defence and security? You know, and actually our defence and security, it is patently clear. Donald Trump's made it clear, and he's not the first president to do so. I mean, Jack Kennedy said it back in the 60s that Europe needed to pay its way, and we've sat rather complacently, all of us, and let America, you know, bear the burden. So I think Europe has got that message across the board. But don't you think, Alan, that our resilience lies working with our European partners, just simply geographically?
Well, I think resilience is an enormously important question. I think the idea of what people would be prepared to fight and die for are important. We've jettisoned the values and the virtues of the nation state, our history, our culture, our tradition. In many ways, people are like, oh, there's nothing ever good that's been done by Britain. It's only been rape and pillage. Whereas in actual fact, all sorts of things have been remarkable and transformed the world and Britain. And in order to have a standing army or a military of any kind, you've got to have young people who believe in what the nation is. But equally, you've got to have leaders that are committed to having resources and dealing with that. And I think that's right. And then you can make strategic decisions about partners, all of which requires a sensible, grown-up situation. Now, you did mention about Donald Trump that that's a kind of against sovereignty for Ukraine, but in any war, there's always at some point a time for peace, and there are negotiations, and depending on who's winning the war and who's losing the war and what that means, unless you have an endless war, then there are compromises or concessions. Now, within all of that, people have to decide, right, what's the cost and what's going to be done and all of those. So I'm not sure that's circumventing sovereignty. Otherwise, you could say that funding them lots of money would be circumventing sovereignty. I think the thing is that the idea of sovereignty is what the demos and the public in their nation-state want. It's clear that people in Ukraine are very brave and have fought bravely, but I don't think we should mix up the idea of sovereignty too much.
Are you saying then, Joe, by that we need to be in like a bloc like the EU to be able to be strong enough to defend ourselves? Because during the First and Second World Wars, we weren't in an EU, were we? We were able to manage, so we should... Well, we won the wars, didn't we? We worked together.
When the Americans came in, but, you know, for an awful long time, we you know, and you can rewrite or go back over the history of the First and Second World War and ask whether we made the right decisions, you know, whether we should have done this, that or the other differently. But, you know, don't forget, you know, the Nazis marched through Europe and got to France. I mean, you know, that is 22 miles away from us. So we weren't working as closely. And, of course, warfare has changed unbelievably since then, that it is about cyber attacks. It is about the cables under the sea. It is about, you know, disruption. It's about fake news. It's about misinformation. It's about disrupting societies. And actually, if you've got somebody like Putin and you've got Russia and China, you know, and probably Iran as well, if you've got them using algorithms to send out fake news and use social media, which, of course, obviously didn't exist during the Second World War, you've then got Trump amplifying that, and it's very difficult for people, I think. You know, there's so much information, and not everybody is as assiduous as they might be at saying, actually, is that true?
But why would you have to be in a trading alliance in that way, and a political alliance with these people in terms of that then? We already have NATO, which is an alliance of countries who have similar aims to protect each other, and Article 5, which is an attack on one, is an attack on all. So we've already got that union. Why do you then need a further political union in the manner of the EU? Why are we weaker because we aren't...
Well, we're certainly weaker in terms of
defence?
Well, I just think it makes it a lot easier. I mean, in terms of, you know, the way you do business with people...
It takes them ages to make a decision, Joe.
Well, I think, you know, it wouldn't take ages to make a decision, would it, if Russia invades Poland?
Well, I'm not sure. I think it probably...
Well, hang on. You talked about
they?
NATO, and we mentioned NATO earlier. So Trump wants to take Poland out of the EU. Right, OK, so he would be quite happy for Putin to go, oh, well, we've gone through Ukraine, let's go to Poland.
Well, OK, we're making a lot of assertions here, right? I think we just need to hold our horses a little bit. President Trump, who had the largest mandate seen in American politics with the public, obviously they've got maybe a new strategy for regional spherical influence, and there's a big discussion about what's happening with Asia, with the Middle East and Latin America and all of that, and spheres of influence, right? And they need to be dealt with seriously. But I think the idea... I think we need to get back to some basics in Britain. We can't even have scouts and cadets these days.
Embarrassing,
and we can't. And in school we don't have authority, and we don't have authority of adults. We've got people who think that, and that's why people like Putin and others look at us and laugh, because we've got leaders that can't say what a woman is. We have a situation where the virtues of heroism and stoicism and strength and history and culture, and you can't have a strong nation if you're not rooted to your roots and trajectory. And there are grave concerns. This is the other point about President Trump's point, where you have lots of people coming in from different cultures, many who are not vetted, who've got very different views and very quickly can have an influence, as we saw in Germany, as we've seen in France, as we started seeing in Britain. Then you've got a question, because if your own leadership are jettisoning all your values and virtues, and you've got people that are coming in, largely men of a young age, with very different views from everything to do with women to society and culture, then that poses a question. Whose virtues and values are being supported? Who's going to go and fight for them? And where are people's actual loyalties to? Those things need to be robustly debated, right, in society. We can't just poo-poo those questions.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there.
Sorry,
If you've
okay.
got a quick comeback.
No, go on.
Yeah, no, I hear you. You've got people from all different cultures and backgrounds, and there's no cohesion really in so many areas. So in the end, who are you fighting for, and why would you fight for them anyway? Let me know your thoughts. GBNews.com/your say. But coming up, almost half of teenagers now admit that they've missed school because of anxiety. What do you make of that at home?
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dewberry, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, welcome to Dewbs & Co with me, Nana Aquia, and my panel tonight keeping me company is Alan Miller and Joe Phillips. Now, a new survey suggests that nearly half of secondary pupils avoided school last year due to anxiety. Of the 2,000 students polled, nearly 50% said that stress or worry caused them to miss lessons, with pressure being the biggest trigger. Older pupils and girls were the most affected, and over a third felt teachers didn't understand the anxiety. Do you know what? When I was young, I mean, the cane was about then. You couldn't just go, oh, I'm feeling anxious, I'm not coming in. It'd be like, hey, come on, up to the headmaster's office, we're not having that. Yeah, do you not think that somehow we have become weak and we have taught our children no resilience whatsoever. Joe Phillips.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're talking about resilience just now. This is ridiculous. I would point out that this survey is carried out by Census-Wide, a market research company commissioned by the Minerva Virtual Academy, and it has a very long quote of some child who couldn't go to school and ended up going to an online school. So I suspect that this is a little bit of a puff and a little bit of PR. But the notion of anxiety, there is nothing new in being anxious. There is nothing new in being stressed about the high-pressure environment, noise, crowds, unpredictable classrooms and corridors. I've got a son and a daughter-in-law who are both teachers, and I know incredibly hard they work and the things that they have to deal with parents and pupils. They're both in secondary schools. You know, they really work hard and most schools do. And I think the problem is the parents quite a lot of the time, that, you know, if you don't feel up to it, you know, once upon a time you just went regardless, and you just had to get on with it. And if you had a problem, you know, mum or dad or whoever would go and have a chat with the teacher and say, look, they're a bit stressed about this, that and the other. But we can't wrap children in cotton wool and then be surprised that they don't go to work.
I think you said it there, because I can remember when they decided to cover children in cotton wool and everything, you couldn't say, or you couldn't do this. And I actually take it back to taking things like religious education out of the curriculum, where you didn't sort of have any sort of general standard of sort of... Do you think I'm wrong in looking at that? There are certain things I think they've taken out of education that would have helped to pacify and calm people, but now, well, it's all gone and it's all replaced by woke.
Well, I think the standards are really important, and when you've got an esprit de corps and a sense of purpose, and you've got a head and you've got teachers that believe in that, and then you've got parents that say they believe in the commitment and the conviction of those teachers, and you've got a society that says that adults know best, but also you can be robust. When you fall over, we don't call the therapists in, we clap and we say, well done, get on. Perseverance, resilience, commitment. But we've lived in an age for the last 3 decades, really, where the anxious society, where you get a badge of honour for being a victim, where everything's presented as stressful. Stress, which was an engineering term in Bridges, then became applied to social situations, and adults talk about stress and they're telling children they're stressed all the time. Children then say they're stressed about everything. You know, the fact is that we've also got a situation, because discipline has now been changed so much, because also teachers and heads are scared of being held to account for being accused of abuse, that often children are therapeutised and psychologised as though they've got mental health problems. Many of them given medications rather than having discipline. And it's the same thing as in the street or with the public, a sense of civic pride and duty, where other adults in the street will step in and say, behave yourself, and you'd expect that from your fellow citizens. And I think we need to reinvigorate a sense of a shared solidarity amongst parents and adults and teachers, but to have authority. Authority is another thing that's been thrown in the dustbin of history, with all these things that we've said about Britain and decolonise the curriculum, and authority is only for mad people that want to just rule the world. Actually, if you don't have authority and discipline, you can't do remarkable things. You can't... Everything from remarkable music to great engineering and having society function. And I think this thing that where children then say, well, we're too anxious. We know many children didn't go back to school after lockdowns. Adults abandoned their positions during lockdowns, and many teachers' unions were telling the government they weren't going to come out even before they made a lockdown. I think we've got to lead by example as adults and inspire children and the next generation to say, you can deal with these things. In life, you're going to get hurdles and obstacles, but a commitment to resilience, and that going through it and working it out. And we should really make that part of a kind of national renewal programme with many other things.
Well, and parents need to support teachers. You know, you see it time and time again. Teachers or heads come in and they say, right, we're going to have a clampdown on these uniforms with you know, very, very short skirts or whatever it is, or unsuitable clothing, or we're going to have a clampdown on packed lunches. We're going to have healthy food. What do you see? You know, you see mothers pushing chips and burgers through the... well, it did happen when poor old Jamie Oliver tried to sort out school meals, you know, and they go, no, he won't eat that, you know, he'll only eat chicken nuggets or whatever it is. Or you get teachers saying, no, it's an appalling, you know, they're behaving like fascists because Sherilyn needs to wear her hair like this or her nail varnish or whatever. So it has to be a social contract, and I think Alan's right, you know, this is across the community. It's children, it's teachers, it's parents, it's all of us. And it's a little bit like, you know, one of the things that's been talked about a lot the last couple of days is trying to encourage or discourage boys and young men from an attitude that we know leads to quite often sexual violence against women and girls. And actually, one of those things is calling people out when you hear it or see it on the train. I mean, I did it not so long ago with a group of schoolboys and they were quite rude and all the rest of it. I said, it's fine, it's OK. We'll all get off at the same stop and we'll wait because I expect your mum and dad are coming to pick you up, aren't you?
Yeah, I do think we should have solidarity with adults that intervene, and the sense that, you see, we got the worst of all worlds at the moment. On the one hand, children are treated as snowflakes, and helicopter parents are not allowed to go out and be free-range kids and play out in the street and take risks and learn things, and that's how we have a society that takes risks. On the other hand, we demonise children and often present them in lots of different terms like feral and all of that, and actually we need to provide leadership and we need to be able to support one another, but people are scared now, right? I mean, I try as much as possible to say things and do things, but we've seen with many of the things that are happening, people are scared. But the thing about solidarity and having a sense of purpose amongst all of us is that that's requiring in that there needs to be a sense of who we are, what values we believe in, what we stand for in terms of decency, behaving ourselves in a certain way, conduct. And those terms have often become really problematised when you try and do it. It's presented in all these sociological terms as though you're far right or that's really terrible. And I think that the common sense and the British public, like on many of these issues, they very much want that. And I think all of us have got a duty, actually, to try and make that happen.
Yeah. And I think, you know, we all said, oh, you know, there were many, many things and we don't want to go over the sort of COVID lockdowns and things all over again. But, you know, there were real genuine acts of selflessness and community spirit and good stuff happened. And we all said, or many people said, you know, does that mean we're going to be kinder and nicer after? Well, no. You ask anybody in hospitality and retail or, you know, working in the health service, people have become much more selfish. And that's part of the problem. My child is more important than your child. And my child is more important than you as a teacher, and it's just not right.
Well, I think we've also handed back a lot of power to the children, haven't we? So we've given them the ability to say what they want, and then we work alongside them. I think we've also lost the art of competition. I went to a sports day recently, and nobody won. Everybody had to go, hey, you did well, it was OK, don't worry, you didn't win, but there's no such thing as winning.
Do you want to hear my cross-country?
Everyone's a winner. No, some people lose. You came last.
Yeah. Well,
do you want to hear my cross-country running story?
Go on,
OK, so when I was at school about 400 years ago, we used to go cross-country running. It was ghastly. We had the most terrifying games mistress, and it was particularly cold and ghastly. We had those awful thick track scoots on, and I was with a couple of friends and we stopped for a sneaky smoke, and then we rejoined the race. But we sort of mistimed it and we came out quite a way ahead of the pack. So this particular teacher, and this is such a brilliant way to deal with it, she said, well done, girls, you really have. I mean, obviously, we didn't think we stank of cigarette smoke. And she said, I'm going to enter you for the cross-country championships, which was the best thing possible because it nearly killed us training. And obviously, she knew what we'd done, but nobody needed to know. It was dealt with.
It was a bit like Milli Vanilli. They didn't really sing anything until they won the Grammy, and then they had to sing, and that was quite unfortunate because they couldn't. Listen, send us your thoughts, post your comments at gbnews.com/your say. We also want to hear from you. Are children wrapped in cotton wool? Get in touch in the usual way.
Join the community and be part of our shows by becoming a friend of GB News. Get a direct line to join the conversations that you hear us talking about every day in our programmes by commenting on Your Say and voting in You Decide polls. Access opinion, analysis and behind-the-scenes videos as we share more from the stories that you see on TV and radio. Plus, watch our shows live and on catch-up anywhere, anytime. If you love our channel, become a friend of GB News for free by scanning the QR code or going to gbnews.com/friend. Don't just watch our programmes, come and be a part of them.
More.
Yeah, and so far we've got about 50,000 of you who've joined up to be friends. We love it. So please join, be a friend of GB News. But coming up, digital ID cards won't stop the boats, says a former Tory security minister. Surprise, surprise. But will the Prime Minister push on anyway?
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries, all sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
After some recent downpours, the eastern Mediterranean is turning a lot drier and brighter through the weekend. Meanwhile, off the west coast of Africa, some rain will be drifting southwards, so it could be quite showery in the Canaries on Saturday. Some showers also likely over the Balearics, particularly for Ibiza. Largely fine for Italy and some sunshine returning to Greece, although with the breeze coming down from the north, it'll stay fairly cool here. We should see the sunny skies returning to Tenerife through Sunday and Monday.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update, brought to you from the Met Office. This weekend is going to be very wet for some northwestern areas. We do have yellow and amber warnings in force, but it will remain largely dry actually across southern and eastern areas. That's once this weather front clears away to the east through this evening. So after a bit of a cloudy afternoon, skies will clear this evening across the south and east, leaving much of the UK with clear, long-lived dry spells throughout tonight. It won't be entirely dry. Far northwest of Scotland, we'll see some showers across the north and west. Some of these could be heavy. And with clear skies across the UK, temperatures will fall away a little bit lower than they have done lately, so a slightly chillier night to come. A touch of frost to start the day across many southern areas, rurally in particular, but it will be a fairly bright start. Plenty of sunshine first thing on Saturday. However, will be a few showers across the far northwest of Scotland. Elsewhere, though, plenty of sunshine. A bit of mist and fog around at first. That should clear quite quickly, however. And plenty of sunshine for Northern Ireland, Wales, as well as England. But you can see that mist and fog around. There will be a few pockets first thing. And I think the best of the more widespread sunshine will be Saturday morning, as we head towards Saturday lunchtime and into Sunday, this rain will spread in from the north and west, and it's going to linger through much of the weekend across northwestern areas. So we do have some quite long-lived warnings in force for parts of western Scotland, Northern Ireland, North Wales later on in the weekend, as well as northwestern England, Cumbria in particular. Further south and east, though, it's going to be actually a pretty dry weekend, and there'll be plenty of sunshine on Saturday. But there is an amber warning in force for the likes of Cumbria for Sunday and into Monday. We could see in excess of 200 millimetres build up through the course of 48 hours or so. So with warnings in force, we are expecting disruption. Flooding is likely as well in some areas. So please stay tuned to the forecast. It does stay unsettled into next week as well. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Britain, for making us the fastest growing news website in the UK. We're truly humbled, and we couldn't have done it without you.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Exercise caution on the A87 Skye Bridge due to strong winds. There's congestion on the M4 westbound from junction 23A Mega to junction 26 Malpas. In Staffordshire, a broken-down vehicle is closing one lane on the M6 southbound at junction 12. The M40 northbound exit slip at junction 2 in Buckinghamshire has a lane restriction. A traffic collision is causing lengthy delays on the M25 anti-clockwise between junction 10 and junction 9 in Surrey. And on the trains, Great Western Railway has a reduced service between Truro and Falmouth Docks, and Island Line between Ryde Pierhead and Shanklin. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Good evening, welcome. It's Dewbs and Co. I'm in for Michelle. It's me, Nana Aquia. I'm keeping you company until 7. Joining me, my panel, co-founder of the Together Association, Alan Miller, also journalist and former political advisor, Joe Phillips. Now we'll move on to this story. I'll have a look at some of the comments that you've put forward. But a former Conservative security minister has warned that digital ID won't stop illegal migrant crossings. Really? Who knew? Sir Keir Starmer had pitched the scheme as a way to make it harder for people to work illegally and secure the UK's borders. But ex-Minister Damien Hinds told Topper's Political podcast that he doubts a single small boat crossing would be prevented.
If you're legitimately, you sign up to deliver takeaway food and then you subcontract your job to someone here illegally for cash, what role does an ID card play?
So, with all your experience in government, security minister, other jobs in government, it's not going to stop the boats or at least even slow the boats.
This is not the way to stop the boats. You need a proper deterrent.
So he's basically saying that if you are in the gig economy, having got off a small boat, how is a digital ID card going to make it more difficult for you to get a job? Well, let's speak to my panel. Is the former minister right? Digital IDs won't stop the boats. Start with you, Alan.
Digital IDs absolutely will not stop the boats. We should remember that in Germany, Italy, Spain and France, there's digital IDs. That has not stopped illegal migrants coming in at all. What digital ID will do, if it was implemented, is it will make us all far more controlled, surveyed and suffocated. But we should note, at the moment, there's something called One Login, which has been being rolled out, which is an infrastructure that 8 million directors are being forced to sign into. Now, there is an option, and I would say to everyone, don't sign into One Login. You can get your accountant to file for you, but the whole push on having a digital infrastructure that the state oversees, alongside trying to force all our children onto it with the Children's School Welfare Bill, and using veterans as guinea pigs, pushing that. Now, we've seen around the world, and Joe earlier on talked about data breaches with Land Rover, but we've seen in Britain multiple data breaches. We've seen internationally, we've seen it with security personnel with Afghanistan. We've seen it with Heathrow grounded. On and on it goes. We've seen it with One Login, that there's been red tests and that basically whistleblowers have shown that it's not secure. So whilst the discussion of a digital ID card, which is very important and tricky, and people are protesting around the country, actually at the Together declaration, we've had over 250,000 flyers given out through doors and in high streets up and down the country with our ambassadors. We do events around the country, campaigns and rallies about it. But the British public, 3 million of them said they don't want this. And it was debated in Parliament, but in a small area in Parliament. It needs to be debated properly, fully in Parliament with the Prime Minister there. It needs to be kicked into touch, because if you're serious about dealing with the boats, then you talk about what the Navy does, what the military does, maybe what citizens do as well. You talk about the fact that we've already got driver's licence, passports, social security numbers. And you see, this has been a thing that's always been pushed along by Tony Blair and the Tony Blair Institute. And whenever the problem is there, it's like, get a national ID card or get a digital ID. We saw off vaccine passports and digital IDs a few years ago, and the British public is just not going to put up with it, right? It was only in wartime we ever had it, and then it was jettisoned, quite rightly, and Churchill said, let's get rid of it. So I would encourage all the viewers to make sure you tell your MPs and councillors and in the local elections that are coming up, because this is going to be the big watershed moment in Britain. Say no to digital ID.
Is it a dead cat? They just chucked it out there to distract us from the woeful management of the country at the moment?
No, I don't think so. I think, as Alan says, it's not a new idea, and Tony Blair tried it all those years ago. And I'm fascinated that Damien Hinds, who was a minister for just about a year, but was in the party that was in power for 14 years. It's really easy to say that won't work. And you think, well, you had 14 years. What actually did you come up with? Or what would you do? Because this isn't particularly helpful. The problem, I think, and I'm sure many people are the same as me, I'm very ambivalent. I was always terribly, terribly opposed to ID cards. But like so many of us, I now give away and probably don't read properly. You know, somebody knows where are my cars parked, what cat food I buy, you know, what time the light goes on. All of those sort of things, banking, travelling, all of that stuff, which, you know, in some ways makes our lives easier. And there is no doubt that if you had a digital system that worked properly, it would hugely help the health service, because that's ridiculous. They're still using post to send out things, you know, 3 days after the appointment that you should have had has been cancelled. So, you know, there's all of that sort of stuff that I think we shouldn't write off digital entirely.
But they've already got a health app anyway. So, you know, where all the details are there, you can sign up to it.
No, that's for us as patients. But what happens is if you go to one hospital, they can't always access your GP records.
Well, no, there is a national app that people can access, so there must be a national system.
I'm afraid to tell you that it doesn't actually work.
Well, they should fix that, because
of course they should.
How can we trust them to do it?
But that's precisely the point. If you had trust in the things that we need it for, you know, look what happened with the post office,
well, look
for
what
instance.
happened with track and trace.
So it's the same people that were doing track and trace that are doing the NHS app, which is Palantir, which have got lots of questions around them. They were actually pursuing citizens using that technology. It was work with the CIA and others, right? So that's a question. But one of the things is that we need frontline staff being supported. We need to get rid of a sclerotic NHS. We need to not keep being told to wear masks, but we need to be able to have an NHS that's fit for purpose to deal with people, not asking us to save it all the time. But the digital ID question is really important. That Joe was saying that people use it for, they use digital technology for banking and for consumer stuff. That's all true. The difference between informed consent with that, with commercial institutions, and a state that has been seen to be involved in deep, you know, like putting people, advocating that people get put in prison for social media posts. We've seen a situation where people have been debanked because of political opinions. We know that there's a situation where the Bank of International Settlements, the CEO said, we would love to have every bit on central bank digital currency so it can be tracked and traced. Now we've got pay per mile being introduced with cars. We've got cameras everywhere, low traffic neighbourhoods sold to us on the net zero lie. So everyone's concerned about this digital snooping biometric state, and I'd encourage everyone to tell their MPs and councillors say no to digital ID.
Well, you know, there was a time when I'd have said, oh, I don't think I've got anything to lose, I don't mind. But now, having seen the way things are going, no, I do mind. But what do you think? Because coming up with the EU rolling back on its petrol car ban, Ed Miliband is looking increasingly isolated. Should Britain now reconsider the 2035 deadline?
I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co. with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Bold. They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What we're going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, though. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health, Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think they would, actually.
So welcome to Dewbs and Co, and welcome to the Dewberry Tavern, Chin Chin. Joining me, my panel, raise your glasses, please. And also, Joe Miller. I called you Joe Miller.
That's okay. We tried to keep it quiet, but you know, now you've blown our cover.
My very good friend is called Joe Miller.
Well, there you are. Hello, Joe Miller.
So, Chin Chin, it's until 7. Alan Miller and Joe Phillips will be joining me. Now, listen, obviously, don't drink and drive, because pressure is mounting on the Energy Secretary, Ed Miliband, after the EU dropped its ban on new petrol cars, prompting fresh calls for Labour to rethink its own targets. Now, ministers are facing demands from the car industry to revisit Britain's plan to ban new petrol and diesel car sales from 2030 and hybrids from 2035. So let's see what my panel make of that. Joe, have you got a electric car or any sort of car?
No, and I'd be perfectly happy to have one if there were, if they were cheaper, and also if there were more charging stations. I mean, there are a handful of charging stations in the town where I live, and I think lots of people feel the same, but I mean, they're still very expensive. And I think, you know, if you're doing longer distances, they're not really very reliable. So I think the jury's out. I think they're fine for short journeys and runabouts if you've got access to charging.
Do you not think they're anti-women, these cars?
Why?
I mean, well, because you're going to have to stop somewhere to charge for a long time. If you've been driving on the motorway somewhere, it's late at night, you can't get a quick fix and fill up the engine and leave.
Well,
No, but you actually have to sit there for 45 minutes. I think it's quite dangerous.
OK, well, it's a good point. I've never heard it before, but I mean, I would have thought that they're in, and I don't know, but, you know, maybe somebody will tell us, are they not in well-lit places at service stations on motorways?
Yes, but you still have to wait for 45 minutes or however long. So where do you wait? I think it's an opportunity for predatory people to
I don't think you have
around.
to sit in the car.
Well, you have to sit somewhere, don't you?
You
So
can go into the service
Yeah,
station.
but just imagine, late at night as a woman, I drive a lot, I don't fancy that. I think it's quite frightening, especially the fact that if they stop or they break down or you run out of juice, you still got to wait a certain time for them to be charged.
Well, recently I was in a situation where exactly that happened, Nana, where we had a car, actually, that it was a hire car, but it was a combined one, and I always thought, well, I had no option, I had to take it, it was the last car they had. The petrol makes the electric run, and then it turns out that it was just kaput, and then they had to come and take it back, and we had to get the train anyway. I think the bigger question for all of this is that net zero, the gig is up. I think that even those who are really big advocates in Europe, Germany in particular, you know, the United Nations, some of the goals it set itself, the sustainability goals and many of the agenda around that, again, a supranational organisation that was making these commitments. It's all very well writing things down, and both this government and the last government, and we should remember that the Conservative government were big advocates of this as well, and Labour. But in the end, net zero will impoverish us. But people now doing the audit know it can't stack up and add up. We've been told all sorts of lies by Sadiq Khan, which we did a report about, actually, on Clean Air, where he said 4,000 people dying in London, and it was published, it was fact-checked by everyone, but it was shown not to be true. Trying to terrify people around things, trying to nudge and peddle and change people's behaviour, not just around electric cars, now we're seeing it's pay per mile, but also around low traffic neighbourhoods. Also being told, by the way, that electric cars are better for the environment. And we know that everything from the copper mining and the cobalt and like what that means internationally, we know that, well, you know, you have to ask yourself if there's a furnace and a process and electricity to make these things. I don't know how people think on the grid these things are made. There's also the weight of the things and what happens in car parks. There's the fact they set on fire quite often. And then there's the question just of affordability and convenience. Now, I'm into technology, right? And I think there are ways that we can always harness it and transform it. But the most important thing here is that almost everybody, except for Ed Miliband, has realised that net zero, the gig is up. And I think that's another thing the public's been very clear about. And we should keep making our voices heard about that, because you know, what's really interesting is the more that things are changing and the more that the British public, the great British public, let everyone know what they think about these things. Things will change, and they are changing, and I think that's a really exciting thing. But we do need innovation, and we do need development, right? But that means it needs to be done in a way that we can harness dynamic wealth creation for everyone. And our transport policy got to be central to that. Right now, if you go out and try and drive through London, you can't get anywhere very easily, right? There's like often we're going at 6 to 8 miles an hour, and then often we're getting fines and charged and taxed continually wherever we go. So they're big questions that people have got.
Joe Miller.
I'm not Joe Miller.
Oh, no, you're not.
Still not Joe Miller. No, I'm still not Joe Miller.
We will be by the end of the night.
Sorry, what's your name? Who are you? You're not Michelle Dewberry, I know that. She's blonde.
No, she is, yes. Well, I can take this off and get another one.
OK.
Yeah, somebody said that my hair does not look like nice straight back like this. But the makeup artist said it was fine.
Yes, exactly.
I went with her.
And that's all that matters. Well, first of all, I'd take issue with Alan about clean air in London. I think the real problem about that, actually, is that it became an argument about a war on motorists. Actually, it was a public health measure. And there is no doubt at all, and I'd be astonished if Alan's going to tell me that this is untrue, that breathing in diesel particles and traffic fumes is bad for you. We know that for a fact. It was cited in a very sad case by a coroner. So, you know, that was horrible. I think that what Alan says is absolutely true, though. We need to look at what we're doing. We all think these things don't cost because they're not smelly or they're not dirty. But look at data centres, the amount of water they use, for instance. So, you know, there's always two sides.
Well, there is, and the other side is it costs at the other end of the chain. So whilst it might be zero carbon at the end of the chain where we're driving it, where the stuff is produced in places where they're getting all the things in Niger and all those countries where they're getting all those rare earths, it's costing those people their lives and also their health. So we really need to concentrate on that. But listen, I've got to say a huge thank you to my brilliant panel, Alan Miller, and they're together.
Thank you very much.
And also Joe Phillips. There you go.
At least you didn't call him Alan Phillips.
Well, that's good, yeah. That's one good thing. Well, listen, also thank you to you for your company. I'm actually back for my Saturday show at 3. But up next, it's time for Lee Anderson. I'll see you tomorrow. Enjoy.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update, brought to you from the Met Office. This weekend is going to be very wet for some northwestern areas. We do have yellow and amber warnings in force, but it will remain largely dry actually across southern and eastern areas. That's once this weather front clears away to the east through this evening. So after a bit of a cloudy afternoon, skies will clear this evening across the south and east, leaving much of the UK with clear, long-lived dry spells throughout tonight. It won't be entirely dry. Far northwest of Scotland, we'll see some showers across the north and west. Some of these could be heavy. And with clear skies across the UK, temperatures will fall away a little bit lower than they have done lately, so a slightly chillier night to come. A touch of frost to start the day across many southern areas, rurally in particular, but it will be a fairly bright start. Plenty of sunshine first thing on Saturday. However, there will be a few showers across the far northwest of Scotland. Elsewhere, though, plenty of sunshine. A bit of mist and fog around at first. That should clear quite quickly, however. And plenty of sunshine for Northern Ireland, Wales, as well as England. But you can see that mist and fog around. There will be a few pockets first thing. And I think the best of the more widespread sunshine will be Saturday morning as we head towards Saturday lunchtime and into Sunday.